Welcome to 2022, which at this point is feeling like it's going to be pretty much a repeat of 2021, but don't really need the harsher mill as we start off on this brand new year. So instead, let's take a moment to reflect on the year that was with the book Postscript Tag 2021. Question 1, the longest book you read and the book that took you the longest time to read. Well, Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr was a honking 626 pages, was the longest book that I read this year, and I called it a clutch-worthy read, an absolute 5-star book for me. And honestly, it's been a great year as far as books go. I mean, I've had entire years where I didn't issue a single 5-star review, and this year I had more than a handful. And I don't know, maybe it is any book that manages to hold my attention, keep me distracted, and keep me from checking Insta and Reddit and work emails and thinking about all the stuff that I still have yet to do is frankly, well, I'm grateful for that. And there's been a lot of books like that this year. Maybe in a different sort of year, I would have been more critical and they would have been 4-star reviews, but honestly, anything that is able to hold my attention, I'm just so grateful for. That is exactly what Cloud Cuckoo Land was like. 626 pages, I could have happily read another 600. Cloud Cuckoo Land delivered exactly what I wanted this year. It was the perfect read for my otherwise distracted head, and I love this chunky boy. And if you want to hear more about it, you can go check out my video review. Now, the book that took me the longest time to read was Catherine Hernandez's Crosshairs. Started off with good intentions and then immediately was called into action for the Booktube Prize. And as I do every year, I enter into a mild panic, worrying that I'm never going to finish all the books that are in my particular cohort. This year, I think I'd read maybe one before the list had come out. So again, dropped everything and just plowed through all the books for the judging cohort of this year. I eventually did get back to Crosshairs, like after a month and a half's time, to finish it off. And I liked it well enough. It just was none too subtly aware of the fact that it was checking off every single diversity box, and it just builds to this big, broad, emphatic finish that's playing to the cheap seat. It just feels really over the top. It's like the difference between Steve Rogers, the musical, and Avengers, the original movie. Number 2, a book you read that's outside of your comfort zone. I've talked about it so much in the past year, so I won't belabor it too much, but there was a particular debut novel from Douglas Stewart this year that was just on everybody's lips on the bookish internet, and fawning praise heaped on this book from all corners of the internet, and I was just adamant I wasn't going to read this. Every year there is a book like that where it is just nothing but overwhelming praise, and it just becomes this it book of the bookish internet, and then you sort of miss that, and you think, I'm never going to read that, whether it's like Ella Ferrante's My Brilliant Friend or anything by Sally Rooney. It just becomes overwhelming, and you just say no. And that was the same with Shuggie Bain. I mean, it is a straight shot down my literary sweet spot, but I thought sort of this grim, gay misery porn, I just wasn't interested in reading it. And then, of course, it shows up in my Booktube Prize cohort. I'm required to read it as part of my judging duties, and surprise of all surprises, of course, I absolutely loved it. Anyway, I talk about that in a video as well. Question 3, how many books did you reread this year? I'm not a book rereader, I know. It's just that there are so many great books out there. Any book that I reread means that it's one less book that I can't discover anew. And so, yeah, I don't reread a lot of books. This year, I reread exactly one book, and that was Lemon by Kuan Yew Sun, translated by Janet Ong. And it wasn't because it was such a fantastic read, because I went in thinking this was a crime thriller whodunit. And I left the book sort of scratching my head, because that's not what this book is at all. And at like 176 pages, I thought, you know what, I'm going to check it out again. Reread it, this time paying way more attention to the story and the little clues and facts throughout. And I enjoyed it. It pushed it from a 3-star to a 4-star read for me, because it suddenly became more like Parasite meets Serial, the podcast, with a little dash of Twin Peaks. And who doesn't love a little bit of that? Number 4, your favorite reread of the year. Well, as we've already established, I only reread one book this year. So I'm going to cheat on this question a little bit and talk about an author that I rediscovered this year. As a teenager growing up, I consumed Agatha Christie. I would go to the library, veer towards Agatha Christie, and just pick up another book. This was back when I used to just fixate on an author and just go through as much of their catalog until I got bored. It's the same with Graham Greene, for example. With Agatha Christie, it was a ton of the Hercule Poirot mysteries as well as a bit of Miss Marple thrown in, but somehow I missed And Then There Were None, which is arguably her most famous mystery novel. In fact, it is the #1 best-selling mystery novel of all time, the 7th most popular book of all time, with well over 100 million copies sold, and yet still, I seem to have missed that one entirely. And I got a chance to read it for the first time this year as a part of our work book club. We won't talk about the original title of the book, which is way problematic, but this is a perfect locked room, or in this case, island mystery with a handy little nursery rhyme to go by. Christie announces right from the onset that she is playing fair and by the rules. The discerning reader should be able to establish who the murderer is if they're paying close enough attention. Now, that wasn't me, but I marveled at her ability to deliver, differentiate, and dispatch 10 guests on this island in a tight 300 pages. When it comes to murder, Christie runs a very tight ship. This was a fantastic, engrossing, fun read that felt very nostalgic, and while technically not a reread, was something that just called to mind those years long ago where I'd go to the library consuming so much Agatha Christie. #5, a book you read for the first time that you look forward to rereading in the future. That would be No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. After her earlier memoir, Pre-Study, there was no way I wasn't going to pick up her debut novel, especially considering all the early praise being heaped upon it. And here now, almost a year later, it's still making a ton of best of lists, award shortlists, and tons of critical praise. And yet, I was just sort of meh on the whole thing. I mean, it's a tough hang. There's that Lockwood hilarity introducing the character who is the queen of the internet, here known as the Portal, and it's filled with this quick, memeable banter that is so indicative of the internet. And yet, at the same time, the internet is so ephemeral. This year, it's all chuggy, bean dad, and she santies. But will anyone remember any of that in 10 years' time? And I kind of wonder how this first half of the book will read in another 10 years' time. Will it make sense? Will it be this sort of awkward time capsule? I'm not exactly sure. I mean, the first half is like, can a dog be twins? And then the second half, the narrator's niece is born, diagnosed with Proteus syndrome, and will likely die within 6 months, which mirrors Lockwood's real-life niece who was diagnosed with Proteus syndrome and did not make it past his first year. That's a weird choice, and while critics find that bracing and formidable and incredibly smart and insightful and just loving that, I feel like I'm missing something. It just didn't work for me. It's just way too jarring. But at the same time, it sort of reminds me of Bo Burnham's White Woman's Instagram. Here's another person that completely understands the assignment, totally gets the internet. Burnham skewers the Instagram aesthetic, talking about women talking about golden retrievers with floral crowns, latte art, tiny pumpkins, fuzzy socks, and incredibly derivative political street art. But then the song takes this turn, and the narrator talks about a favorite picture that she has of her mom. So the thing that we think of as ephemeral, funny, performatively aspirational is still fueled by humans that are going through it, who have lives that are bigger than what's captured on this tiny mobile screen. And so I think that Lockwood is doing a similar thing with her story. I'm just not quite there enough to get it. And I think maybe a reread will help me get to that point. #6, favorite short story or novella of the past year. A Map of the Simplified World from Yun Che's short story collection, debut short story collection called Skinship, which is hands down my absolute favorite read of this year. I didn't love a single story more than the other. This thing is all killer, no filler, but it wasn't until I got to the third short story that I realized that I was in for something special with this entire collection. We're introduced to G1. She's in a 3rd grade classroom in Rego Park, and I'm just waiting for the cliched, smelly lunchbox story, but that's not what this story is. On the blacktop, it is this wonderfully diverse crew of kids that are attending this, and they called each other Zips, Whiteys, Chinks, Towelheads, Kebabs. No one was worse than the other. So it's not that type of story at all. Instead, it's about the choices you make to fit in, how it's influenced by your immigrant parents, your peers, the environment that you're in. It's about discovering the library for the first time, about making friends, and all of that in just a mere 30 pages. Like I said, I don't know if this was my favorite short story in the entire collection, but again, this is where it became very clear to me that this was an exceptional collection that I was going to enjoy, and it turned out I did. Absolutely love every single story here. I think this is worthy of a full video where I can gush at length about this collection. So I'll leave it at that. Number 7, Mass Appeal, a book that you love that you would recommend to a wide variety of readers. I mean, you're going to like what you like, but I absolutely love Love After Love by Ingrid Persaud. It's written in the island patois of Trinidad. We're introduced to Betty Ramdon, newly widowed after the death of her abusive husband. She's trying to raise her son solo, so they take on a boarder into their home, Mr. Chitan, a homosexual, in a country where it's still considered illegal. And together they make this sort of eclectic family unit. And I liken this story to a juicy telenova. It's just huge emotional swings, big highs, low lows, just a fantastic read that packs this huge emotional wallop. And I wish it got more love and attention out there in the bookish internet than it does. Highly recommend it. A 5-star read that helped kick off a wonderful year of reading for me. So yes, I would recommend that to a wide variety of readers out there. Number 8, Specialized Appeal, a book you like, but you would be a little hesitant to recommend anyone else. I mean, everyone likes what they liked, and there's a book for everyone out there. But this is the first in a 3-part series, so that's a little daunting, and it's sci-fi, which is a genre that isn't for everyone. But at the same time, Cixin Li's The Three-Body Problem has won all the awards, and so it's not exactly like I'm going out on a limb recommending this particular book. But at the same time, it is sort of a wild story where humans make first contact with an alien species, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's another planet ripe for plunder. So they set off in order to just sort of bag on Earth's riches, except it's going to take them 400 years to arrive here. And they realize that humans' capacity for technological advancement will probably outstrip theirs in 400 years' time and make them much more of a daunting planet to colonize. And so they realize before they set off that they need to break science. And that is a lot right there. I mean, you have that 3-body problem, the idea of celestial bodies that are moving with no more than gravitation to control them, human computers, an alien race that sort of dries up and rolls themselves up to be rehydrated later. I mean, a lot of sciencey, hard science stuff there. If you're the person that sort of skimmed through all the sciencey stuff in The Martian, this book probably isn't for you either, because yes, it is a lot. So anyway, I absolutely loved it. I still need to get to the rest of the books in the series, but even the first one was well worth checking out. Number 9, reflect on your year as a booktuber. This year has been a lot. The collective breath that we've been holding, hoping to get out on the other side of COVID, has been completely stymied by Omicron, which has sort of quashed a lot of holiday plans. I mean, it feels like an entire year of holding our breath, not the least of which because this is an airborne pathogen, but honestly, I remember early on in the year here in Southern Ontario, with the botched vaccine rollout trailing well behind the United States, just showed clear signs of mismanagement and poor planning. And I thought, oh, great, this is just exactly when I'm going to get COVID before I can get the vaccine jab. And then that hot vax summer that we were promised lasted like a couple of weeks where we got to visit people and see things before things went back down into lockdown again. And here we are in the winter, wondering if the kids are going to be able to go back to school in person or not for the winter semester. And like, it's been a lot. Work has been creeping in as well. Working from home is great, mind you. I so appreciate that, and I feel lucky to be able to do that. Leftovers are fantastic without having to worry about stinking up the entire office, reheating kimchi jjigae in the microwave. I can do that. That is awesome. I love leftovers. But man, those clear boundaries between work and home are starting to get a little bit more porous. The days are filled with meetings all day long, and it feels like the only time to actually get some work done is in the evening. And so I find my workday getting longer and longer. And then at the end, I'm just exhausted. I don't want to do anything other than maybe read, which has meant it's been a great year of reading, and I'm so grateful for that. I've read so many great books. I've read so many books. I haven't had a slump at all. So that's good, but it's also kind of exhausting. So burnout, pandemic fatigue, and sort of this complete inability to make any sort of future plans, which has resulted in this sort of fuzzy brain filled with uncertainty, which has meant Booktube videos has gone down. Ironically, though, the reading is great. There are just so many great books that I still need to get to for this year. There's Razorblade Tears, Lauren Groff's The Matrix, the latest from Jen Young, Jonathan Franzen, Ruth Ozeki. I mean, so many reads that I need to get to, but yeah, at the end of the day, that's what I'm doing, is reading, not really shooting a video here. I'm just setting it up on my phone here just to see if I can actually do it. Hopefully this thing turns out at all. Who knows? Number 10, tag someone. I don't know. I've been off Booktube for a while. I don't know who's done it, who hasn't done it. If you haven't done it and are seeing this, go ahead, give it a shot. It's the Book Postscript Tag. You all know it, and it's well worth checking out as an encapsulation of the past year, which, yeah, has been a lot. I hope you guys are all doing well and sort of muddling through it. It's been nice. It's been a little slower, sort of clearing off the decks for 2022 as far as work goes. And it's hard to believe that it's just a few days away before we're all back in earnest in the office getting things done. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the break, such as it looks like this year in 2021. And have a great week of reading, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.